We all love basketball. It is the second most popular sport in the world. Its growth over the past decades has been unrivaled by nearly any other sport. And while professional leagues exist all over the world, I never knew the full story of how the sport was founded. Surely there's more to basketball than I learned from playing NBA Jam as a kid or naming family dogs after my favorite players, both of which are true. But my question was, why had I never heard the history of one of my favorite sports? This video is an attempt to fix that. Basketball got its start here, in the frigid landscape of a Springfield, Massachusetts winter in December of 1891. As the legend goes, James Naismith was a physical education instructor at a YMCA school. Yes, that YMCA. And because winters were so harsh, he needed something to keep athletes active and in shape, so he came up with a game. He nailed 2 peach baskets over the doorways of a gym, he wrote down 13 quick rules, and gave the students a soccer ball. And just like that, basketball was born. And from there, things progressed quickly. In March of the next year, the public was invited to see this new sport for the very first time. In this game, the students would play their teachers. The teachers would go on to win 5-1 in what was admittedly less than an exciting game. But hey, field goals were worth 1 point back then, so what can you do? But despite this seemingly uninspiring start, the game actually caught on in YMCAs all over the country. In 1893, the game began to expand outside of the YMCAs, and Vanderbilt became the first college with a basketball team. It would only take 5 years for the first professional basketball league to be formed. It was named the National Basketball League, and by all accounts, it was a massive failure. It was awful. It lasted only 6 years, but despite the fact the world wasn't quite ready for professional leagues, the game continued to grow primarily through the popularity of the YMCA and the ever-growing list of college programs. The game was spreading internationally as well. In 1932, basketball went big time when the International Federation for Basketball was formed in Geneva, Switzerland. It's known usually as FIBA from the French, which I will not try to pronounce here, but FIBA remains the international governing body for basketball and was the precursor to the game being added to the Olympics, which it indeed was in 1936. Basketball officially became an Olympic sport at the Berlin Olympics, and it has been part of the Olympics ever since. So, remember the original National Basketball League? Well, in doing some research, I came across this site, APBR, the Association for Professional Basketball Research. And on this site, you'll notice that the name National Basketball League has been used in some fashion for a league 6 times. 6 times! There have been an incredible amount of now defunct leagues named the NBL. But for our purposes, we're going to focus on these 2. The first one we already talked about because it was the very first professional league. It was the only league before 1900. But this second one, this NBL that began in 1937, was the first successful-ish league. And while it at times struggled to survive, the college game is truly where basketball began to thrive. In the late 1930s, college basketball would finally have a national champion when its 2 major tournaments were founded. Now, in college basketball today, there are 2 main tournaments. There's the NCAA tournament, sometimes referred to as March Madness, mainly for marketing reasons. And then there is one that some people refer to as the Not Important Tournament, the NIT. While today all of the top schools compete in the NCAA tournament, that wasn't always the case. Far from being unimportant, when it was founded, the NIT was the premier basketball tournament, and it would stay that way until the 70s. In 1946, a competitor to the NBL's monopoly formed, the Basketball Association of America. From the beginning, the BAA's goal was to focus on the larger markets. This instantly caused a problem for the already somewhat shaky NBL. Within 2 years, the NBL had lost 4 of its teams. In the following year, the NBA was formed. In 1949, there was a merger. The National Basketball Association was formed with 17 teams, and while it is officially a merger of the NBL and the BAA, only 6 of the 17 teams were still a part of the NBL. It's important to note that the modern NBA dates its roots back to the BAA. Now, despite there being a single major league for professional basketball in America, things did not begin great. Financial stress for most teams meant that almost immediately over the course of 4 years, the original 17 teams dwindled to only 8. These 8 teams became the core group of the NBA that we know today. Part of the original BAA were the Boston Celtics, the New York Knickerbockers, and the Philadelphia Warriors. You might know them by the name the Golden State Warriors. Teams that were a part of the NBL but left for the BAA prior to the merger were the Fort Wayne Pistons, you know them as the Detroit Pistons, the Minneapolis Lakers, but now we know them as the LA Lakers, and the Rochester Royals, who are now the Sacramento Kings. All of these teams moved exactly 1 season before the merger, presumably jumping ship before the NBL folded. Notice too that this is the reason that LA, despite the lack of lakes, has a team named the Lakers, because Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes. The only NBL teams to survive the first 4 seasons after the merger are the Tri-City Blackhawks. I know, confusing name, right? But importantly, they're now the Atlanta Hawks. And the second is the Syracuse Nationals. We now know them as the Philadelphia 76ers. Well, there it is. Hope you enjoyed this video. In the next video, we will look at how the NBA took these 8 teams and built on that foundation to create the league that we know today.